Hi everyone. Thank you very much for coming to our event. It's our first MS Doug event for 2021, so welcome to the year. Hope this year is going better than the previous year. Okay, so tonight we're not going to do an intro session like we normally do for the community. We're just going to start with our talks, and we're very privileged tonight to have a guest all the way from Boston in the US. Rachel is joining us to speak about developing inclusive apps on iOS and Android. She's a software engineer at Microsoft, so we're very privileged to have her here. So thank you very much for beaming in at probably a very odd time. We are then moving over to Roma. Roma is going to be speaking about Power Automate and giving us an introduction to Power Automate. Roma is also a Microsoft MVP, a BizApps MVP. Then we're moving over to setting our SQL data free with Kafka. And the speaker there is Niels, and he's a data platform MVP. So we've got some really interesting sessions tonight to share with you. Then, as I said, we're doing away with our intro session tonight, our community intro session. We're handing it over to the insights from the OfferZen team. They will be giving us a state of the nation report. There's also a link at the bottom of the screen. That is, if you go to that link, you can enter a competition for a T-shirt. We'll also post the link in the chat as well, so you can definitely enter the competition. So without further from me, I'm going to hand over to Rachel.
Hi, everyone. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Oops. Okay. All right, so I'm Rachel. I'm a software engineer on the Xamarin Forms team at Microsoft. I love eating. I'm a huge foodie. Quarantine, I've been spending a lot of time reading, and I'm based in Boston right now. So when things get better, I'm really looking forward to exploring Boston some more. And in terms of tech spaces I'm interested in, I'm really interested in the accessibility, mobile app development, and tech for good spaces. So it's great that I'm on the Xamarin Forms team because I love what I'm doing. And I'll also be the first to admit that I'm actually really new to the team. I've only been here for around 6 months, so I'm still learning a lot. And feel free to check out my GitHub or LinkedIn if you want to keep up to date as I continue to grow and learn. All right, so that being said, today I'll be talking about developing inclusive mobile apps. And I'm going to be talking about what exactly that means in terms of what I mean when I say inclusive mobile apps, why any of this matters, and the basics of how we might work to achieve this. So I wanted to start with the word inclusive and just kind of clarify what we think about when we see this word. Specifically, I want to make a distinction between the word inclusive and accessible. I think a lot of times when we think about inclusive design and inclusive products, we think about designing things accessibly. We want to make sure we're inclusive of people of all abilities. But when we say inclusive, we want to make sure we're inclusive not only of people of all abilities, but of all different identities, experiences, and all these different categories. And admittedly, I'll be focusing a lot on accessibility during my talk, just because I'm limited to the time and the scope of this presentation. But this is just something important that I want to make sure we all keep in mind. And another great way to look at this is through this quote from Rob Whitaker's book that I'm currently reading and highly recommend, Developing Inclusive Mobile Apps, Building Accessible Apps for iOS and Android. And he says, great accessibility shouldn't be an obscure feature that only a small number of people use. At its best, accessibility should be a first-class citizen of the product or service you are creating and should benefit everyone. And I think this is really, really important to keep in mind, especially because I would argue that a lot of the products we have today don't actually meet this baseline. So another great way to look at it is through this tool, the persona spectrum, that helps us to realize that there are permanent, temporary, and situational impairments that people can have. And people can benefit from a single solution despite being in very different situations. So for example, if we look at the second row, we have a depiction of an individual who is blind, an individual who has a cataract, and an individual who is a distracted driver. But you might see how a solution like a voice assistant, for example, would benefit all of these individuals, even though they are in very different situations. So moving on then, now that we have a greater understanding of what exactly I mean when I say inclusive, I want to focus on then what do we mean when we say inclusive mobile apps. So there are a lot of ways to look at this, and there are a gazillion different guidelines that we can find about designing inclusive mobile apps. This is one such set of them, inclusive design principles that include providing a comparable experience, considering the situation, being consistent, giving control, offering choice, prioritizing content, and adding value. And there are a million different things that these guidelines and principles can include. These are just a few examples ranging from making sure that your mobile app provides content for alternatives like captions, live transcriptions, that there are color contrast capabilities, and so forth. But you might be thinking, okay, great, we have these inclusive design principles, but they seem kind of vague. It's kind of hard to realize and understand what exactly you can do in your mobile app, especially because the options are truly limitless. So again, as I mentioned before, I'll be focusing more on accessibility than on inclusivity as a whole. But that being said, there are some more concrete guidelines for accessibility, and those are known as the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And these guidelines are a global accessibility standard and legal benchmark for both web and mobile. And they're called web content because they were created before the time of web, but they are very applicable to mobile today as well. And you can visit any of these links below at the bottom to take a much closer look at the various details and guidelines that they provide. But on a high level, they cover these 4 principles of helping you to make sure as a mobile app developer that your app is perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust across all these various categories. All right, so developing inclusive mobile apps. What does it take to actually develop these inclusive mobile apps beyond following those web content accessibility guidelines? First and foremost, if there's one thing you take away from my talk, I hope you remember that empathy is truly the name of the game. Beyond accessibility, as I keep saying over and over again, we want to make sure that the apps we develop are inclusive. And the only way we can do that is if we remember that there are users that we want to make sure our products are inclusive of beyond just ourselves, our friends, our family, and our own experiences. And then, of course, we want to be sure that we do our research, that we look into, specifically to accessibility once again, that we look into the various accessibility settings and features that we can leverage and understand the accessibility models and APIs that are out there. And of course, we want to make sure to test our apps rigorously and leverage any available tools and resources we have to do so. So that being said, I want to introduce you to some of these basic accessibility features on Android and iOS. Oops. Okay. So I have here my Google Pixel 4a, my Android device. And I'm going to go to settings, scroll down to accessibility. And as you can see here, there are various accessibility features that the Android platform natively offers. There are various screen readers. There are display features, some of which you might be familiar with, for example, dark mode and font size that allows us to change the default font size on our phones. We have various interaction control settings that allows us to adjust certain thresholds for touch interactions. There are audio and on-screen text settings and so forth. There's a lot here. I won't be able to cover all of them. I want to focus today primarily on Talkback, which is Android's primary screen reader. And a screen reader like Talkback, what it does once we turn it on is it starts literally talking back to you. It reads everything that is on the screen. It'll read things that you can tap on with one finger on the screen, or you can traverse through the things that are being focused on by using one finger to swipe right or left. And I'll be showing you some of those gestures soon. And if you're someone who uses Talkback frequently, even as a developer, I highly recommend turning on this Talkback shortcut for easy access. And if you go into settings, there are various adjustments you can make to Talkback itself. But as a first-time user, I highly recommend checking out this Talkback tutorial at the bottom that helps you to really familiarize yourself with Talkback for the first time. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to turn on Talkback now.
Talkback on. Talkback.
So you can see that Talkback is already starting to talk back to us. And if I tap on something like use Talkback,
Use Talkback on. Talkback.
you can see that the element I clicked on is already being talked back to us. And as I said before, if I swipe right, it'll, with one finger, it'll traverse through the next elements in the order that they're designed to.
Options. One top. Navigate.
And then if I, if I swipe left with one finger, it'll traverse backwards through those elements.
One Talkback. About Talk. Settings. On. Options.
Cool. So now I want to show you what it looks like to actually use Talkback in order to do something that you might regularly do on your app, on your phone, for example, taking a photo. So I'm going to head to the home screen.
Accessibility. Navigate up.
All right.
Home screen. One of.
And I'm going to go to the camera app. And
Camera. Double tap to activate. Double tap and hold to long press.
I'll double tap to activate.
Close social share. Camera. Take photo. Button.
Let's
Double
see.
tap to activate. Double tap and hold to take quick video.
Let's see how easy it is to take a picture of the Xamarin monkey and then to delete the photo. So I forgot what Talkback told me, so I'm just going to tap on the screen again.
Take photo. Button.
Okay.
Double tap to activate. Double tap and hold to take quick video.
All right. So it seems like I'm on the Talkback button and it's telling me that in order to activate it, I can just double tap. And this is really useful information for someone who might have visual impairments and might not actually be able to see what's going on. So I'm going to double tap now to take the photo.
Camera. Photo taken.
Great. All right. So now I want to try to go to the photo.
Close social share.
But as someone who might not know where I can access those photos, I'm just going to swipe through the screen and see if I can find out.
Photo gallery. Button.
Okay.
Double tap to activate.
All right, great. That sounds promising. So I'm going to do what it says.
Photos. Photo taken on February.
Okay, great. So I'm at photos now. And in order to delete it, as someone who might not be familiar with this, might not be able to see what's going on, I'm going to swipe through the screen again and see if I can figure out how to delete this.
Back to camera. Photo taken on Feb. Back to camera. All photos. More options. Share. Button. Edit. Button. Lens. Button. Delete. Button. Double tap to activate.
All right, so it seems like I finally found the delete button. I'm going to double tap like it tells me to.
Move to trash. It will be removed from all folders. Move to trash. Double tap to activate. Move to trash. Close social share.
Okay.
Camera. Photo Talkback off.
And we did it. So as you can see, it takes a much longer time than it might typically take in order to take a photo, figure out how to delete it. For Talkback users who use Talkback more frequently, they might just be more accustomed to it and be able to navigate more quickly. But I think It really helps us to build empathy when we actually put ourselves in these positions and try using the screen readers ourselves, so we can see how different the experience it is and how important it is to make sure that we meet these this baseline. Okay, so now I want to show you the same thing on iOS. So I have here an iPhone 7. And I'm going to do the same thing first. I'm going to go into settings and I'm going to go to accessibility. And as you can see here, we have various accessibility features that the platform provides. And like on Android, I want to focus specifically on the screen reader. So here we have VoiceOver, and I'm going to turn on VoiceOver. Oh, and as on Android, you can also set a shortcut here at the bottom of accessibility settings, accessibility shortcut, that allows you to access VoiceOver more quickly. So I'm going to turn on VoiceOver now. Okay, and as before, I'm going to go to the camera app and see what the experience is like to take a picture of my Xamarin Monkey and to delete the photo. All right, so I'm going to double tap to open. All right, we have our Xamarin Monkey. I didn't hear VoiceOver tell me to do anything, so I'm just going to tap the screen again and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to double tap because as a VoiceOver user, I know that that's what I'm supposed to do with buttons. But as you see, compared to Android, it doesn't actually tell me this time to double tap to activate. So these are interesting differences to note when we are testing on iOS versus Android. All right. And now I'm going to try to access the photo gallery again. So I'm going to swipe right. And conveniently, the focus goes to the photos, even though I swiped right, because it knows that the developers knew that I would probably want to go there next. All right, and now I'm going to try to find the delete button again by scrolling through, by swiping right on the screen.
Rachel, is there supposed to be sound from the iOS device? So I see the little volume. Yeah.
Yeah, have you not been hearing anything? Okay. Okay. I can try real quick to fix that. Are you hearing anything? Can you hear?
No, nothing this side.
Let me check on the live
Okay.
stream. It should be working all the way through, but
Okay, let me try resharing my screen. I might have forgotten to turn on to share my computer sound.
no.
Okay, let me try again.
Screen dim. Photos.
It's coming through on the live stream.
3D touch to show home screen actions.
We've got audio now.
Okay. I was playing so many things at
Can you hear
once.
now?
So yes, it's working now.
It's in your head.
Okay. All right. Okay, I'll go back to camera now, and we can do the same thing.
Camera.
So
Double tap to open. Use
double
3D
tap to open.
Camera. Take picture. Tilde left.
I'm gonna take the photo. And as I mentioned before, the iPhone didn't tell us to double tap to activate. That's just something it assumed we know as a VoiceOver user. took the photo. I'm going to swipe right, and it's going to take us to the photos, which is very convenient.
Photo and video viewer button.
I'm going to double tap.
Back button.
I'm going to swipe through all the elements again to find the delete button.
Today. All photos. Live photo. Live. Live toolbar. Photo toolbar. Favorite. Switch. Edit. Button. Delete. Button.
All right, and again, it didn't tell us to double tap. This is a difference with the Android camera app we saw. But I know to double tap, so I'm going to do that.
Delete. Delete photo. Delete photo. Space.
And
Back
we
button.
deleted it. This is the photo I took before. All right. Cool. I'm going to turn voiceover off
Alert.
now,
Accessibility. Select voiceover off.
so it doesn't talk while I'm talking for the rest of the presentation. And okay, I'm going to jump back in now. So as you can see, Android and iOS already offer a lot of different accessibility features. So at the bare minimum, as mobile app developers, we want to make sure that apps we create are compatible with these features that are natively already available. And you might be wondering, great, how do we do that? Well, as I mentioned before, iOS and Android both provide accessibility APIs. So I'll be going over a few of the most basic ones that you would want to familiarize yourself with. So here we have a property called important for accessibility on Android and is accessibility element on iOS. And this property allows us to label controls and to indicate whether or not we want a specific control to be accessible. So for example, with the screen readers, if we indicate that we don't want a control to be accessible, then the screen readers would skip over them, not read them out loud at all. Another useful property we have is content description on Android and accessibility label on iOS. And this property allows us to set what we want the screen reader to actually read out loud for specific controls. We have another property, this one specific to only Android, that allows us to do essentially the same thing as the property I just described, but it allows us to do it by linking to different controls. So for example, if we want an edit text accessibility label to be based on a text view that precedes it, this is something we can do. And similarly, there are APIs for iOS that are specific to iOS and don't exist on Android. One of them being accessibility value, which allows us to set the current value to be read aloud by the screen reader. And the last one I'm going to be talking about is hint or accessibility hints on iOS. These are actually very different. So don't let the similar names on these platforms fool you. But essentially, they both allow you to add further information that gets read aloud by the screen readers. So these are the properties that I talked about so far. And as I mentioned, they're the most basic ones. But as a Xamarin developer, I of course need to talk about Xamarin. So on Xamarin, what we do is we offer these properties that link down natively to these properties on Android and iOS I have described. So we have these automation properties for is an accessibility tree, name, help text, labeled by, and we try our best to get them to do what you would expect on Android and iOS respectively. So now I want to show you what it looks like to actually try out those properties on a Xamarin Forms app. Okay, so I have here a Visual Studio project with the Xamarin Forms app that I started working on. I'm going to actually deploy it now while I'm explaining it because I know it's going to take a while. I'm going to run it on iOS. So, all right, what we have here is a basic stack layout, and we just have a bunch of random labels. We have an entry here, and we have an image. And okay, we see this is what it looks like here, the web app. The iOS app. And I'm going to turn VoiceOver on, and Let me know if the sound isn't working again, but hopefully it'll work. So I'm gonna turn VoiceOver on, and I'm going to just go through everything on the screen, and let's see what VoiceOver does and how it reads things out loud. And make any observations based on things that you, if you were developing this, might want to change to make more accessible. And turn on VoiceOver.
VoiceOver on. Forms accessibility demo. Welcome to my Xamarin. Forms at 11Y sample.
Okay, so first thing I noticed here is that when it read out this label, it stopped at the period, assuming it was the end of a sentence. And then it just read out A11Y. It didn't say accessibility as I would want it to. And that itself already isn't a great experience. Okay, I'm gonna swipe right now and see where it goes.
Name.
Okay, it totally just skipped over the image. I'm gonna swipe right again.
Text field.
Okay.
Double tap to edit.
We have a text field. We don't really know what it's for though. And then if I scroll through all the labels.
Label 1. Label 2. Label 3. Label 4.
It just tells us that it just reads out loud the labels for us.
Label 9. Label 10.
All the way through label 10. Okay. So how can we improve this? So the first thing I noted was how I didn't like how VoiceOver was reading out loud the title. And I don't actually care that the label is has this text exactly. So I'm just going to change the text itself. I wanted to say Xamarin Forms accessibility with no awkward punctuation in between. I want this image to be focused on. So I'm gonna add the automation property for is an accessibility tree, set it to true, and this is gonna tell the screen reader, hey, I want you to focus on my image. And I'm gonna set a name for it. I'm gonna say Xamarin logo with blue Xamagon and text. And hopefully when the VoiceOver comes to this, it will actually read out this name that I set to it. Okay, we have name, entry. I think actually I want entry to pick up on, I don't want it to, not be vague about what the entry is about. I want it to be labeled based on this name label I put. So I'm going to use for that the labeled by property, and I'm going to set it to, it takes in the name of a control. So I'm going to set the name of the label to be entry label. And then I'm going to use this name in the labeled by property for my entry. And hopefully then the entry will indicate that it is associated with name. And then I think I want to add some additional values to the labels 1 through 10 here. So for label 1, I think I wanted to say meaningless, label 1 of 10 meaningless labels. And then maybe I can do that for the first few, but I think it will be really overwhelming, quite a lot if I have VoiceOver read that out loud for all of the labels. So since we haven't seen us setting anything to not be in the accessibility tree, I'm gonna set the rest of the labels to just not be in the accessibility tree by setting is an accessibility tree to false. And then we'll see that the screen reader just doesn't go there. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with this. Let's run it again and see what happens. Did you hear the sound okay, by the way, the first time I ran the app?
Yes, yes, it is. I just got a message here in the chat or a question saying, okay, if you describe the code a little bit more when you go through it, you probably can't see so well. They're small. And also, maybe just crank up the font for the people in the back of the room.
Safari. Forms Accessibility Demo. Welcome to my Xamarin Forms Accessibility Sample.
Okay, so we have the revised version of the app running. And here we have, I'm going to tap on it again so we can hear it again, but this corresponds here to this first label up here. And I modified the text, and so we can hear now the text is being read out much more fluently.
Welcome to my Xamarin Forms Accessibility Sample.
We're not seeing the awkward pause at the period that was between Xamarin and Forms before, and we're hearing the full word accessibility since I fully typed it out instead of just using the shorthand abbreviation A11Y. Okay, I'm going to swipe through.
Xamarin logo with blue Xamarin and text.
Look at that. That's awesome. So before, VoiceOver completely skipped over the image. It was as if it didn't even exist to people who use VoiceOver. But now here in the code, since we indicated that we want isn't accessibility tree to be true, we want screen reader to pick up on the image. And we indicated exactly what we want the screen reader to read here. Xamarin logo with blue Xamarin and text. It did exactly that.
Xamarin logo with blue Xamarin and text.
Music to my ears. Okay, I'm going to swipe through again and see what we have next.
Name.
We have name, which I didn't add any accessibility properties to, so it's the same as before.
Text field. Double tap to edit.
We have this entry, which even though we added this label by property, it's the same as before. And this is actually because the label by property is specific to Android and not iOS. And this is because it's linked to the label for property I shared before that only exists on Android. So we simply just don't have do anything on iOS since normally it's not something that exists on iOS. And then if I scroll through the rest of the labels.
Label 1 of 10 meaningless labels. Label 2 of 10 meaningless labels. Label 3 of 10 meaningless labels.
It reads out loud this extra accessibility text I added. Label 1, 2, and 3 of 10 meaningless labels. And then if I try to scroll through the rest, we shouldn't be able to since I set is an accessibility tree to be false for the rest of the labels 4 through 10.
Label 3 of 10 meaningless labels.
So I try to swipe through and it doesn't let us, and it just stays on label 3 and keeps telling us that this is the end. Okay, now I'm going to show you real quick the same exact thing on Android, since this is a Xamarin Forms project, and we should be able to see the same thing on Android. And we should be able to see that labeled by property working on Android as well. Okay, so I'm going to run on my Pixel. I'm going to change the code back to what we had before. And I'm going to run it. Oops, I'm still on camera. Okay, so I'm deploying the app now to Android. You should see it pop up here soon. Great. Okay, it seems like I accidentally set dark mode on earlier. But that's okay. We're still here. You can see everything. So I'm going to turn on Talkback and let's hear what it says.
Talkback on. Forms accessibility demo. Welcome to my Xamarin. Forms 11Y sample. Name, label 1, label 2, label 3, label 4, label 5, label 6, label 7, label 8, label 9, label 10, forms accessibility demo.
Okay.
Double tap to activate.
So I just ran through everything really quickly, and it doesn't seem like I can actually click into anything
Edit box.
other than the edit
Double-
box. Not a very accessible experience overall. It totally skipped over the image again. We saw similar things where the first top label here, welcome to my Xamarin Forms accessibility sample, was read out loud kind of awkwardly. So
Language.
I'm just gonna paste in the better code that we had. And
Screen off. Ringer silent.
I'm going to run it again. And we should be able to see the same exact thing that we saw on iOS.
Rachel, can you zoom in a little bit? The
Oh, sorry.
text
what
is a little
part?
small.
This part?
Yeah, just the XAML.
Okay. Yes.
Much better.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Some of it
11:42
all-
a.m. No SIM card. Emergency. Device unlocked.
Oops.
Form 6. Edit box.
Okay. Sorry, what was that? Okay. All right. So now we have the updated code, and we're running it on Android again. And I'm going to start at the top and scroll through the elements as before, and we'll see how it's been improved again.
Welcome to my Xamarin Forms accessibility sample. Forms accessibility demo. English US QWERTY keyboard hidden.
Great. So it read out loud this label again with the corrected text. I'm going to scroll.
Xamarin logo with blue Xamagon and text.
It focuses on the image now again, and it reads out loud the Xamarin logo with blue Xamagon and text, name that I set to it on the image here.
Xamarin logo with edit box for name.
It
Double
tells
tap
me,
to edit text.
I don't know if you heard that. I'll tap on it again, but it tells me now that it's an edit box for name. As I mentioned before, that was a property that's specific to Android, which is why we didn't see it on iOS. But here with the labeled by property, I set it to entry label, which has the text name. So now it says, now it indicates that to me via VoiceOver.
Edit box for name.
Edit box for name.
Double tap to edit text.
And now I'm going to go through the labels. And as before, we should see again that we see VoiceOver read out loud a meaningless label, a second meaningless label, a third meaningless label for the first 3 labels. And then we shouldn't be able to access label 4 through 10 at all, since we set is an accessibility tree to false.
Label 1, a meaningless label.
Oops, sorry.
Label 1, a meaningless label. Label 2, a second meaningless label. Label 3, a third meaningless label.
And then we can't go.
Welcome to my Xamarin. Label 3, a third meaningless label.
So after the third label, it makes this noise indicating that we can't go further.
Welcome to my Xamarin Forms accessibility sample. Talkback off.
Alrighty. So that's all I had to share with the Xamarin Forms demo. I'm going to wrap up real quick. So again, these were the properties that I talked about and shared with you. But the truth of the matter is that there are so many more properties beyond this, and a lot of them are specific to Android and iOS. These are just a few examples. You can go check out the APIs online, but there are so much more that are already out there and offered that we just need to learn to leverage. And on Xamarin, a lot of the time, this is one of the challenges we have to work with regard to accessibility as well. We need to figure out what the best way is for us to provide a shared API that can work with Android and can work with iOS, and figure out what is the best experience for our Xamarin developers. And this is something that we're continuously, actively working on. You can read more about our automation properties here, and you can stay tuned with what we're working on in terms of accessibility at our Xamarin Forms repo and also our .NET MAUI repo to see what new things we are ideating. And we would love to hear any thoughts and ideas you might have to share with us. And if you're a Xamarin developer who is concerned with accessibility, you can even join our monthly accessibility panel. That's all. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure sharing with you all. And if we have time for questions, I'd be happy to take a few.
Thank you, Rachel. That was really awesome. We do have some questions. Do you have some time? I know you have to get back to busy Boston, but there are some questions here. Can you use an emulator when building these accessibility apps? Are you using an emulator in your demo?
So unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, the answer is no. I'm currently using physical devices. So I have an iPhone here, and I have a Pixel here, and I was just casting them on to my screen. There are some online tools that you can try to use with your emulator that are helpful but won't provide the exact same experience. So for iOS, there's an accessibility, something called Accessibility Inspector on macOS that you can try to use to navigate the iOS emulator. And on Android, I'm not sure, but I think you might be able to try to activate Talkback on the emulator. But again, these experiences, I'm not sure how well they work because I personally haven't tried them. And even if they do work to a certain degree, it's really, really important that you try to replicate these experiences on the physical devices themselves when it comes to accessibility.
Okay, cool, good, interesting advice. There's another question here. Do similar properties exist in Windows Universal for screen readers? There's an example here, zoom text.
Yes, so actually on Xamarin, the properties that we use are based on properties that already exist on UWP natively. The UWP screen reader, the screen reader on Windows is called Narrator. So that's something you can search on your Windows laptop. You can search for Narrator. There's also Narrator tutorials that come with that and explore how that works as well. With Windows and web apps in particular, as well as on mobile apps, keyboard accessibility is also really important. So if you use like the arrow keys or the tab key, those should theoretically be able to work with your app well. So if you're using the arrow keys, the focus would move up, down, left, right, for example.
Okay, cool. Just going through the rest of the questions, I think you've answered everything.
Cool.
I did have sort of a question. like if you like want to just find out more about accessibility and stuff, are there blogs or articles that Microsoft has or in the community that say, okay, obviously you've given us a very quick intro in general accessibility with, say, Xamarin Forms, and how would we, go about other things like maybe for colorblindness or things like that? Is there some docs we got or some place to get started?
Mm-hmm. There are plenty of them on our website. I didn't link any in specific because there truly are so many of them. So if you just look it up on Google, you'll get a ton of results. And the book I mentioned earlier goes into a lot of these things in much more detail. So I really highly recommend that book again. So the book was here, Rob Whitaker's Developing Inclusive Mobile Apps, Building Accessible Apps for iOS and Android. And I'll share this afterwards, so you can access all the links on here too.
Okay, cool. Is it going to be on like your GitHub? Then I can just, someone's asking a question specifically of they're wanting the links and stuff. So how would you share that? So just either on the questions here, or how are you planning that so that people can get hold of it?
That's a great question. Yeah, I can post it to my GitHub afterwards.
Okay, cool. Just put your link to your GitHub on there, then people can connect. All right.
Yeah.
And if Alan has any more questions,
we'll add the links to the Q&A. No, that's everything from my side, and I don't see any new questions arriving. But thank you very, very much for the talk. It was really, really cool. Hope you'll be back soon to do some more talks. But yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to swap over to our session with Stephen from OfferZen. He's going to give us some interesting insights about the developer communities. Over to you. Let's see if we can share your content.
Right, let me jump on. Can you share this super quick? You should be able to see a slide.
We are seeing slides.
Fantastic, cool. Super quickly, my name's Stephen from OfferZen. For those of you that don't know who OfferZen, I'll give you a super quick high level of who we are and why we have a report that I'm going to show you. Quickly run you through some of the report data, some of the insights, and then just tell you a little bit about the form that was shared. Don't worry about filling out that form unless you opt into the newsletter. You're not going to get spammed. But if you do fill out the form, you can get some swag. You'll also get the report links of the report I'm about to show you. And then you can also, there'll be a link to a forum, which is like a super new, just an idea, really. You're the first people I'm ever sharing it with. And maybe if you have specific questions, like around Xamarin or specific languages that you're interested in getting the data for, you can ask there, and we can dive into it and hopefully get some answers for you guys. So super quick, who are we as OfferZen? So we're a tech talent marketplace. It's a place, I'm in the Netherlands, so this is the Dutch site you're looking at, but essentially it's a job platform. Companies can apply to you as opposed to you applying to the company, yada, yada, yada. It's a place where you get a really good job, a really cool company. That's just the front. What we actually do is make t-shirts. So this is all the different t-shirt designs that we have. There are 27 different designs. That's going actually on 30 plus. This is a little bit outdated. And we've distributed around 40,000 t-shirts now. So we're doing that. But in all seriousness, the reason we do this stuff is to really invest in the tech community. So we see it as a bit of a responsibility for us to do cool things in the tech community and help grow the tech community. So some of the other stuff we're doing tonight, you'll see there's we do these make events. You can learn how to use an ESP8266 on Arduino. You can see there's a little flashing light there. And you get a little set delivered to your house, and you get to play with a bunch of other devs, and you get to just meet people again and do something where it's a little bit different from a live stream. You get to hang out with some people, learn, and actually make some stuff, including those little rubber ducks. So that's who we are. We're a place where you can get a job, but most of the time we're trying to do other cool, fun stuff. Just trying to grow the community and get people a bit more connected. One of the things that we do, which is why I'm kind of here tonight, is to talk about this thing. Let's just go, might mess things up. We do an annual survey of the software developers in our community and around. And the idea is that in our industry, there's not that much kind of information that's available. It's quite a tight industry, and it's also quite a confusing industry because a software developer is very hard to define. So a lot of people can say they're a software developer, and you'll no doubt have met people that say they're software developers, but they're not. They've kind of like downloaded WordPress and done some stuff, and they call themselves a dev. And it's very difficult for anyone to determine a software dev from a not software dev, especially people that are kind of creating data. We do that as our business, so that's pretty cool. Our job is to find great software developers, put them on our platform, and companies can then make offers to those people. So that's quite a privileged position we find ourselves in. So what we did is we surveyed these software developers, and this is the result of that survey. So I think there's over 3,500 software developers. So thank you to anyone here who's listening who contributed, and I'm sure there's some of you. And what this does is it creates a couple of things. It creates surface area information for you as a software developer to navigate your career. But the really cool thing that I'm personally excited about is we can create this kind of content for people that are hiring software developers. So you guys would have all been on the receiving end of a recruiter talking to you where they really don't understand anything about what you're doing. So we're trying to enable companies, you can see here a little bit jokingly, hiring 101, trying to enable companies as well to understand what makes developers tick so that they don't have to keep guessing and buying feasible tables and stuff. So if we go to the data, I'm going to run through the data. Please drop your questions into the Q&A. We'll jump onto those in a bit. And also, as I say, there's this forum, which you can jump on, drop a picture of whatever insight you're after, and tag me. I'll see if we've got the data for you, and see if there's anything interesting. So jumping into the data, the first thing we asked this year is basically what software developers, or the first thing we published this year was what software developers think is going to be kind of the future industry. And what's quite exciting for us is like AI and cloud technology is just way out ahead, which is pretty damn interesting. As I said, the links will be shared later. But what is really interesting for me is if you look at this, developers have gone absolutely wild over Python. So in the last report, JavaScript was #1, marginally so. And this year, Python has just gone leaps and bounds ahead. So you can see there's this like serious move towards ML, data, AI, and that world. So that's pretty exciting and pretty interesting. Another thing that's maybe worth mentioning is we also did the same survey now in the Netherlands, and the data looks pretty much the same. So it's a worldwide phenomenon. Other interesting things, top of the stack, and people that feel confident in their growth are cloud technology companies, devs that work at cloud technology companies. Obviously, with the big cloud race happening, that's a very exciting place to be. And this one, JavaScript is the most used language framework. The most used language this year. And you can see by seniority, it's relatively the same. We added SQL this year. It's a bit of a kind of contentious whether it's like a language or not. But we added that, and it's just quite interesting to see how many people are actually using SQL. So just note that this was a multi-select, so you could choose many languages. Yeah, okay, some comments on SQL. And then in the frameworks world, this is pretty cool to see what people want to use and what people actually use. ASP.NET out front, .NET Core coming in #2. But if you see what people are like after and what they think the cool kids are using, React, yeah, way out ahead, Angular next. So it's just quite cool to see how people are kind of thinking about the future. What we've seen from the last report is what happens is people move from the desired to the actual. So you'll see later, I think it's in this report. I'm just going to jump real quick to, I think it's in the hiring report, how often developers learn new languages. And that is pretty damn often. Give me one sec, I just want to find this. wrong report. Sorry about that. I'll find it for you in a bit. But with developers being able to learn new languages with such high frequency, people move pretty fast between these, and which also sucks for companies that are locked into legacy languages, because they lose all their devs to devs wanting to move to companies with cool languages. So we see that happens quite a bit. Cool. And then at the unhappy side of things, we asked developers which was the most disliked coding language, and PHP out in front, and C++ next. We also then looked at the data to see which devs disliked their own languages, and C++ took the lead there, ahead of actually JavaScript, then C, and then only PHP later. So some interesting stuff there. So the headers are definitely outside the PHP users. PHP devs seem to like the language. It's just they're getting the hate from outside. We got some salary data. What's been interesting here is it's been pretty flat growth here over the last couple of years. There's a trail of articles on OfferZen that you can follow to see how the salaries have changed. Big companies, more money. It's kind of obvious, I think. That's kind of interesting. And cloud technology, again, not only offering a super high level of career growth, but also a good package. So good place to be if you're in cloud. Some language specific stuff. If you want to earn proper bucks, then the really niche languages like Ruby and who else is here? Kotlin. Let's see, Kotlin's the kind of middle of the range, but Go and Ruby looking really strong. If you're going to jump into those. So we also ask people about what they do and kind of if they code for fun. Most devs do code for fun, which is nice validation for this. I think most of the devs that are coding for fun are not coding in the stack and language that they use at work. They're generally breaking out, learning some new stuff. That's a guess, that's not from the data. Here's the stuff about people learning language every few months. So you can see the younger the dev, the more likely they are to learn a new language every couple of months. And as devs get older, you can see that kind of that changes. You can see there's very few devs who say that they would only learn a new language once a decade, or they're not interested, because you probably just become relatively obsolete or a very highly sought after global developer. Some stuff about education and degrees. Yeah, so we saw degrees doesn't make that much of a difference if you're a degreed software developer, but it really does make that much of a difference if you have your honors, which was quite strange. We looked at this from a couple of angles, and that seems to be the insight. So this data has been statistically t-tested, which is tested for statistical significance when we make claims. But if you spot anything in the data, please just shout, because we're not a data company. So what we do on the side. So we might have got something wrong. If we did, please let us know. Cool. So what do devs want? Growth. Plain and simple growth. It's kind of the theme throughout, and growth equals challenge, and challenging projects as well. So challenging projects, generally a challenge for software developers, a hard problem to solve or a new language to learn. And we've seen that. We must have run about 2,500 software developers through Make Days, and this is just the truth. So for makers like ourselves, we like to make stuff, and we like to be challenged when we make things. So those are kind of the two very big things coming out. We also did a remote, how people are handling remote survey last year. And there's quite a lot of stuff about work-life balance that's coming out. So if you're sitting at home feeling burnt out, that's because you are. You don't know it, but your commute has disappeared, your breaks have disappeared, and you're not looking after yourself, probably. So this is a whole new thing that we're very keen to unpack this year and give some serious attention to. We think it's something that's not being spoken about enough, and are quite keen to help as much as we can kind of create visibility around this as we go into our new world. Cool. All right. That's the rest of the stuff is kind of interesting. There's some stuff about people like jumping out of hiring processes. Obviously, we're about jobs mainly as a platform, so there's quite a bit of content around that. You can go check that out if you want. And then we also have this hiring report, which you can jump into. That's got like a whole bunch of other data specifically around people that are tech leads or senior devs that are hiring other devs. Some information about the demographics. You can see 14% female. It's not good enough. It's better than the Netherlands, which is pretty interesting, and a pretty decent demographic percentage. Like I would say, that's my personal opinion, but not representative of our country's demographics, unfortunately. Largely based Cape Town and Joburg, and kind of late 20s to 30s is kind of where the majority of the devs coming from. So that's the report. You can go check it out. As I say, we've created this like pretty hacky little forum using Discourse because we don't know any better tools. If you have cooler tools, then shout our way. If you want to get deeper insights, we have all the stuff loaded up into Looker, so we can generate insights or run pivots and do all that kind of stuff pretty fast. So if you wanna chat a bit more, jump on that. And you can ask us some questions. As I say, you can finish off or kind of complete this. You'll get, I think you stand a chance to get a t-shirt. I think there's like 30 t-shirts to go. And you'll get the links to the report as well as the forum, and we can chat there. And that is it from me. I think I'm within time. Are there questions / hate speech in the comments?
Thank you very much. We've posted the links to the t-shirts and of course this report as well. There is an interesting question for you here. Is OfferZen a global company and how do you make money?
Yeah, t-shirts. No, we don't sell our t-shirts. We're a global company now. So we've recently launched in the Netherlands, which is why I'm here. So we run 2 marketplaces, one in South Africa and one in the Netherlands. You can get a job in the Netherlands if you're a South African dev, especially in a remote world, but we focus mainly on the 2 different marketplaces. How we make our money is we have about 100,000 software developers in South Africa registered, or people registered against our platform. And every week, about 150 of those software developers are going live onto our platform. Companies make those. So we've got 1,600 companies. They make job offers to those software developers. And when they take a job, we charge the company a percentage fee. So that's our core business. That's the core business. I'm kind of more involved in the more community-oriented aspects of it.
Yeah, there's also a suggestion here that you maybe should change your core business because they've picked up that you've got awesome artwork and you should become game developers.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we do get that a lot, and we've been asked to open a shop as well. But I think at its very core, our mission is to unlock the potential of software developers. That's through like the whole industry, through surveys and stuff like this, through just learning a new language, like jumping into some like kind of low-level code or into some hardware, just doing stuff that extends people. And I think through that we build up strong relationships, and then people use us to find a job at the end of the day, and that pays the bills. So that's how we kind of operate.
Awesome. I think the questions have run out, but thank you very much for sharing this information with us. It's going to be very useful. And also thank you very much for always giving all the communities awesome swag.
It's a pleasure.
Cool. Thank you very much. Okay. I think next on our lineup is Roma. She's going to be speaking to us about Power Automate. Over to you, Roma.
Thank you, everyone.
There we go.
I'm just checking if you can hear me, right?
We can hear you. We can see your slides.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I just realized that we are doing the first talk, so I'm super overwhelmed now doing the first talks of 2021. Hope you are all well. As I've done some fancy things with the slide, especially the designing part, I myself was very bored with the boring presentations, and I did not want any of you to sleep with me. So here I am. Power Automate, before I deep dive in, just from a picture overview, I want you to know that if you are one of the persons who is doing some layman jobs or manual work a lot, may it be printing papers, downloading stuff from email, or sometimes we do forget that, sending the daily status reports, accepting that approval buttons, then this session is for you. You can really automate it using Power Automate, and some of the stuffs are free. So you can change your life from going manual to automated, and you should be living with peace, especially with your office job. Yes, you can also use Power Automate to help you with your household work, and I'm gonna exactly tell you how we do it in one of our demo slides. So here I am. That's me. I'm Roma Gupta. I'm Indian. I'm in Johannesburg from last 4 years. I travel a lot. I'm basically a Dynamics 365 and Power Platform consultant in my day life. I enjoy data migrations, something I've learned with time, with Azure Data Factory and Scribe. Both are the data migration tools. I do love SSIS, but I'm not keen on that side for data migrations because of the simplicity that ADF and Scribe has given to us over time. On the reporting aspect, my favorite tool is Power BI. I did self-taught it myself, and my side gig is the data analysis. So I do a little SQL coding, but yes, I do help. I do help people doing those analysis, and I do ask for it. I'm not major on the SQL side. I kill applications to check the performance. So yes, that is something on my daily life. My team or my product owner asks me what is the performance, because we run some huge campings. That's the reason I kill applications, so I know what is the limitation, what should be the maximum customers, or what should be the maximum number that you should do while doing any campings or research or anything. So any numbers you want related to Dynamics 365 or Power Platform, you can ask me. I'll be happy to help on that side. I've been very glad to also get the award for Microsoft Business Applications MVP this year. So I'm very proud for that. You can tweet me at thattechicgirl. On the LinkedIn, I'm available with Roma Gupta, the same name. And personally, I love traveling. I have traveled almost whole India, and I have traveled UK and South Africa. I can bet I have traveled a lot in whole of the Eastern Cape for now. Western Cape and Cape Town is still pending for me. I like to read novels in my spare time, and I'm a nature lover, and so I've got a lot of plans too that to take over more than 2 hours maybe if I do all of those plans at the same day. So moving on. The major takeaways, since it's an introduction session, you will get to know what are the connectors and templates easily available for you to plug and play. What are the different types to create a flow, and we'll do a little hands-on. We'll try to also see if we can have some questions from you, and I can help you doing that on the hands-on session, but let's see how that goes. This is the Power Platform space, the low-code, no-code space that Microsoft has been building it. There are other low-code, no-code platforms for different competitors, but yes, Microsoft is one of them. And I'm focusing my low-code space in the Power Platform. I love doing Power Apps as well with time. And today's session is more on the Power Automate. Power Automate is an intermediate, you can say, the bridge between all the other applications, Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Virtual Agents. So Power Automate is where the glue or the bridge who comes between your all the data applications, be it your database or Excel or any document, and the other platforms as Power Apps, for example. Power Apps is basically on the front end side. So if you're one of the mobile developers that do the hard code coding, you might enjoy doing Power Apps. Power BI is mostly on the reporting, so I'm not focusing there. Power Virtual Agents is the bots that you can have created for the Q&As that you have or the knowledge base that you currently have. Power virtual agents are those bots that answer the layman questions initially, and they can also ask questions for the data validation so that you know which specific queue to target. So moving on, connectors. This is one of the main key role part in the Power Automate. We have more than 275 connectors, and they have been increasing so far now in Power Automate space. Some of the major connectors that I personally use is Office 365, Twitter, Common Dataverse, which is a CDS. That is one of the own database that you create or get with Power Automate. So you can choose to either work on the CDS side, this one, which says the premium one, or you can work with your normal Excel sheets. That's fine, as long as you have your data ready or you know the source, it's fine. Twitter and approvals are some of the major where people want to use it on their day-to-day life. Today I'll be more focusing on the RSS and Twitter because that's the area where I mostly live on, and how you can leverage those. In my day-to-day life also, since I'm a Dynamics 365 consultant, we use this trigger, which is Dynamics 365, to leverage all the Dynamics data and move it across to either Power BI or the Power Virtual apps. Gmail, I've not tried it, and the MSN Weather is very fancy so far. If you want to get your own weather contributor app, if you don't use the one which is currently comes with your mobile, maybe the MSN Weather can also help you on that side. So there are a lot of stuff. When we do a hands-on, I'll show you all the connectors that are available. This is a sneak peek of the connectors. The templates. There are templates that are available and ready to use, so you don't have to create much from scratch. The templates allow you to just plug and play your credentials and you use it. So for example, let me say save the email attachments from the outlook.com to Dropbox. When you use this, you will have to enter your credentials for the outlook.com. It will validate it and authenticate it, and then you give the credentials for your Dropbox. So using those, the template would be ready to use, and you can test yourself before making it live. And the things which we are seeing at the bottom, like scheduled, automated, and instant, are the type of flows that you can create. Automated are something based on triggers. You can also schedule that. Instant is something like I can click on the phone or come directly to the web app and use that trigger to flow, use that trigger to work for you. The instant is different because it does not work automatically. You have to do an action on the web page or on the mobile app for it to run it for you and do the work. So that's where it is different. A scheduled has a very typical style of running. So you can ask it to, let's say, schedule it for every week or minute or month, and you can also specify which days do you want it to run it for you. So if there is something very particular you want to be ready, so let's say every Monday morning there is a meeting or there is some important meetings that you want to attend, but you keep forgetting from last 3 weeks, you can schedule a daily reminder for yourself to be on time. So we're gonna sneak peek on that template side also. 3 ways to create a flow. We have seen 2 of them that are connectors and templates. Moving on, the flows that we are talking about is something which I called as a blank, which Microsoft has also called as start from blank. What it will tell you is this is the first way and the most easiest way as per me and my hands-on practice that I've done so far. So these are the 5 types of flow that we see, and you have to create it from blank, meaning that you don't know which connector to be used, but you at least know, right, that on, like, let's say on Monday, I want at 8 a.m. to remind me something of this. So you don't have to do old school way. using a pen and a diary to write it on a notebook, but you can schedule a flow for yourself. And if you're thinking about, do you need a license? I haven't covered it, but yes, I'm telling you upfront, there are many connectors that are free to use, and you do not have to buy their subscriptions. The subscriptions or the purchase will only come in picture for the premium connectors. One of the premium flow is business process flow. I'll talk about that shortly. So yes, you can use all of this using your own email addresses. You just have to sign in on flow.microsoft.com, and you should be able to just get along with that. I'm going to show you all the automated cloud flows that would need a designated event, as it mentioned. So it will wait for an event to occur that you would have specified, and then only it will run. This I've mostly used on the RSS feed of my own blogs and some of the Power Apps blog. So that is one of the reason I can easily see all the updated news that's happening around, and I don't miss it, because my app or my LinkedIn app will notify me that your post is published. So I would get to know that something has been published, and I can check it out to just check the news. If you have any RSS available, you should do that just to check it out. And you can do it with your own blog as well. The instant cloud flow is, since it is manually triggered, you would have to click or do an action. Since you can also download, it has a mobile app, Power Automate, so you can download it and trigger it when you want. But it will rely on you, so it is little manual that way, and I don't want this stuff. I keep forgetting, so I avoid using the cloud flow. A scheduled cloud flow is very awesome. So for example, during the course of last year, how our life have changed, I usually use this to remind everyone that, especially on a Thursday, that tomorrow is a Friday, please don't schedule a meeting. I've seen it over years in my journey that Mondays and Fridays are usually when people don't want to work much, but focus on their own stuff. There may be deadline, there may be submissions. So those days, especially for Friday, I've done it that please, it's a Friday tomorrow. If there are anything you want to discuss, do it today as a Thursday. So that's where I've done it. People were annoyed a little with me in the beginning, but they're fine now. So that's funny stuff that happens. A desktop flow is especially for your desktop environment. It needs a CDS database. And you do your stuff on the, let's say you have a folder on your desktop, which you always use for, let's say, attachments, saving all the attachments, and then you later sort it out. Then you can use a desktop flow and tell it exactly the steps to do it. On the demo today, I don't have a CDS environment, so we won't be seeing the desktop flow. A business process flow is one of the premium connector, and this was originally in Dynamics 365 space that they have brought in the Power Automate space as well. What it does is it will be let's say a reimbursement example. A reimbursement is, first you have to submit your bills and apply all the amount necessary screenshots to be sent, and then only it will go for approval to your manager. Okay, in this case, so it is designated steps. Only when one step has done, it will move over to second step. So it is not possible really to move from one step to the last step immediately, but it will force the user to go to each step. The advantage of the business process flow would be any person can come from your team or who is using this business process flow can come and see at what stage the particular data record is sitting. So I can come and see, yes, I've submitted the reimbursements, whether I can whether I have to take follow-up with my manager for the approvals. If yes, once the manager has approved, then I can see, yes, it has gone to HR and then into the finance department. So you can easily track the whole process of approvals for reimbursement in this case via business process flow. Can you use an approval template which is present out of the box? If that's a question in your mind, yes, you can do, but both has a different UI to it. Business process flows gives you an entire different window. and the template that is present just runs in the background, and once the action is met, then only the flow will run for the approvals. Templates we have seen in the new world, the templates, we have also seen that Microsoft Teams have been integrated with Power Automate. So you can directly have the course of action and paste some message on behalf of your team or yourself when you're, let's say, out of office, or when you are away from the desk and something really urgent has happened. So you can notify your whole team on the Teams app directly that you're not at desk, and you will reply as soon as you are back. So this has also helped me. The recent example we did is few months back, we were asked to submit our daily status at the end of the day, and we were trying to reduce the number of meetings. So as soon as the tasks were closed for the day, we used Power Automate to submit a whole report on the Teams channel, and it helped us. It helped us a lot. So my senior does not have to accommodate all the individual tasks that were burned for that day. He would get a direct report, so that whatever he wants to do with that fancy report, he can just leverage it. We use just 2 columns, what task was done and by whom, and 3 columns, and whether it is still in progress or it is closed for the day. Connectors, that's the third way. Connectors, and I'm moving back the template. If you are very sure that you know what connectors you will be using or what template you want to leverage, you are most welcome to use these 2 ways, the template and the connectors. I usually start from blank. That's my easy way out, and I like to search what I can try new. So that's about it. I'm moving to the hands-on. Let's see. Sorry about it. I can see Matt. My bad. Okay. I'm here. This is my incognito window. The flow.microsoft.com is the official website, and you can, if you want to sign in and try it for free, here are your options, or if you want to buy directly, the product and the pricing are here. We have a Power Automate community. So at the end, if you want to stay in touch with the community for Power Automate especially, you can come here and sign in for there. There are many blogs, forums, and galleries, and you can also submit your ideas if you're very keen to know that there is something not available yet. And if your ideas are welcome, people will vote for it, and the product team usually looks into it. And you can check out the whole thing. So what I've done is I've already signed in, and I'm moving to the new tab. I hope that is visible to everyone now. So the things to notice when you log in, and how do you know that you're using a free one? After the sign up, you can see there's a default environment and there is no other environment. So what happens is, as long as you, as soon as you sign in, a default environment is created for you, and this is my free account. I haven't purchased anything. For some reason in incognito, my profile and my name does not come. So sorry about that, but I don't also get the option to create my own environment. That is the first check to know that you are using a free one. And if the other checks, I'll let you know shortly as we move to connectors. So this is the home page. There's a navigation pane, so you on the left side, so you can do all the fancy stuff there. On the home page, we have this. You can quickly search what you need. There's a template section, so I'm not sure if this got visible. I usually zoom in. Okay. So all the templates are present here. If you want to check quickly, there's an approval section, since most of us, I assume, need some approvals from managers, or are the someone who approves someone else's request on their behalf. So there's an approval template to be used directly. Some of the popular services or connectors are available in this site, like SharePoint, Outlook, Twitter, OneDrive, Dynamics 365. This one is deprecated. which is showing here, but a new one is coming up, so I'm really not bothered about it. And as you see here, there's a short example that what happens when a new tweet is posted on the Twitter and what you can do. This is a MailChimp monkey there, and it's not a Xamarin monkey. Alrighty. On the left side, the home page we are currently in, the action items is the approvals or the business process flows. My flows I'll come at last, and the create section. All the templates that we have seen just now, you can browse it over here and it will tell you, or you can easily search. So let's say I don't know what I'm doing today, but let me do something with Gmail, and if I search it, it will list me down all the templates that are currently available to be used with Gmail. If you found your respective template, that forward all Gmail emails to another email address. If this is one of you, or this is something called a service account Gmail box, then you can leverage this template and it will be easily accessible. Connectors we've talked about, that was the screenshot from this. There's a view that will list you that whether you are seeing all the connectors or standard or premium. Premium connectors would require you to purchase or have some licenses, and they keep on coming. So the premium connectors would keep on adding. If you don't find one over here, do make sure that you check out the standard connectors that are free, available for you to use. And I'm using it on most of my daily life. So if there was a SQL dev, I'm not sure if it is in this side, but there are GitHub, Slack, Google Drive, Excel, and that is on the standard side of list. I don't know all these connectors. If you know, very good. My knowledge is limited to those connectors that I use on my daily life. Freshdesk and Flick, I know those kind of stuff. Google Sheets is another. LinkedIn is another standard connector. There are two connectors, LinkedIn and LinkedIn V2. We mostly use V2. That's the latest, and LinkedIn was the old version. So some stuff they are moving. On the data part, if you have some tables and connections, all those will be listed over here. You can also monitor how your flow has run, or the Power Automate that has run. Sorry, yes, I forgot to tell you, Flow was the earlier name of Power Automate. When the global rebranding happened, Flow was renamed as Power Automate, but we still keep called as Flow because we're used to it. I'll take time to move across. You can also make your own AI builder. AI builder part is also in the Power Apps, so you can also leverage building models from Power Apps and send data to Power Automate, and you can build your own models. I've not seen that side of Power Automate for now. And there is a Learn part which navigates you to the Microsoft Learning paths. So there are some good learning material over there. I'm coming to my flows. So this will list you all the flows that I've created in my tenant for now. This is a free tenant, so I use it all the time. Most of them is, this one is an instant, which is disabled mode. If you can see, there is a small icon over here. We'll move to it shortly. Twitter and RSS feed is mostly I've used to keep my stuff automated. There is a big icon here, and it says we've got some new names. So if there's something new has happened, Power Automate will tell you that we have moved, or we have got names, or we have launched a new flow. So that happened when desktop flows were happened. Desktop flows were earlier called UI flows. So the icon were on this side of the tab. So that fancy things happen that you don't have to search all the time. You can also share a flow, that's correct, with you or your team. I don't have any shared view, and this is a premium. Since this is not a premium account, it will let you know that you cannot share it or you cannot leverage it. So that's another thing. If you are on a free subscription one, you cannot share it, and somebody also cannot share it with you unless you are on the same tenant in your office. Coming back to the create part, I'm moving up a little. Yeah. The automated cloud flow, if I click on this one, it will ask you to give you a flow name. It is not necessary at this point of time. If you have not decided, you can just skip. If you want to search for your triggers, you can search here directly. But if not, sorry, let me zoom in a little. Yeah. But if you don't know what your trigger is, you can completely ask it to skip, and it will create for you a blank canvas. Meaning that since you have not given the name, it will say untitled, and yes, you can rename it later, so no problem about it. Then you can search your triggers over here easily, and then you can also move to triggers and actions. An action will only happen once something has been triggered, so you will have to trigger a course of you will have to trigger a command so that your action can be met. So you can see over here, and if you are not sure or if your triggers are not available, you can move to the see more option and search for it. I'm going back to built-in part. There are some connectors which are built in for the core developers that are available on the call. If you want to have some JSON code, you can use your HTTP connection, or you can directly use some variables or text functions. Since it is more from the low code or no code side, that's the reason there are out of box connectors available for those people to use it as well. But the techie people on the call, if you have those fancy web APIs requests and responses, you can use the HTTP connector that is available, the request connectors, and this is free, so you don't have to worry about being it premium until you hit one of those connectors. So good luck with that part. The standard connectors are mostly free and we leverage it. Premium, we have seen it, and there's a My Clipboard feature which saves all your favorite code snippets over here. I have not done anything of that. I don't have a favorite as of now. I'm going back to create again just to show you what happens if you want to do a business process flow. It will again ask you for a premium account. So we can go back. A scheduled flow. If you see, the UI is little different from what we saw on the instant flow. You can again give it a name here or skip it. When do you want to run this flow is completely designed. I've scheduled my desktop to be in the South African time. If you want to have something set over server, you would have to give your server timing over here. And when you give your server timing, make sure the environment that you select or that environment is also in sync with your server. We have seen that some of the flows does not trigger at that particular time due to the time mismatch on the server or on the environment. You can repeat it every month, week, or day, hour as needed, and it will design the flow for you. Let me do a second, just saying, and you can totally skip it for now and you're back to this. So how you create or what is the reoccurrence, sorry, what is the reoccurrence is completely on you. You can do a schedule. So let's say testing MS Doug. My bad. And I want to do it every second. Today is Wednesday, and I want to start it by 7:45. My bad, PM. The minute I'll say create, it will give me a reoccurrence. So meaning we have the one we selected in the previous screen. Sorry. If I go to advanced options, I can select the time zone. It is not going to default for me now. I have not selected it, but yes, you can select your own time zone and the start time. These are some of the advanced options, and a sneak peek or as a best practices, you can always add a comment, very short comment, when this flow will run. Setting reoccurrence. So that's something on the comment side. This comment is similar to if you're on the Visual Studio, you do your comments. As a best practices, we also do it on the flow side, so that if you hand over it to someone, another team or the support team, or someone new joins your team, it might be easy for him to go through it on a high level and get his questions ready before coming it to you. So that way it would help. Static results is hidden for this one. We'll see in future flows. On the settings, it gives you a custom tracking ID. Now we have mostly used it for the APIs and the concurrency control. There are cases that on update of a field, the same flow has triggered twice or thrice. So you can control your concurrency from here. You can the degree of parallelism you want, you can schedule it. You don't have to write it. So that's the best part. I like the slider over here. If there are some more trigger conditions, you can enter it and you can choose to completely ignore that part for now as well. For the developers on the peak code, the JSON will be available here. Let me zoom in a little. Yeah, so the code will be available here. You can use this code directly, or if you want to edit something, you can do that. Let's say I want to do not 45. Okay, my bad. It's not allowing me to edit. But that code will be edited on the peak code side, and the time will be updated. So that's for the techies on the call. And if you want to delete, it is back to a normal flow without the reoccurrence part. So that's it. I'm going back to my flows. Finally, it has loaded. Thank God. Okay, so I'm going to edit one of the existing RSS feed that I do. This is one of the example. What I have done is I've leveraged the flow.microsoft.com. This is the official site for all the blogs that are being published. So if I go here on the blog, it will list me all the blogs for the Power Automate that has been published till now. So I don't have to come here to check all the blogs. I may forget it with my other activities. And what we all do is, let me just quickly search for this one. Yeah, you can either choose to subscribe this blog to get it, or if you want to directly put it on your pages, like I've done it for my Twitter and LinkedIn. You use the feed. Let me open it also in a new window. The feed will give you the XAML for it. And this format is what a Power Automate will understand easily. So going back to my flow, I've used the feed. Sorry, I've used the feed. Okay, you can go help. Thank you. You can use the feed to leverage, and you can also use which property will determine this trigger. So if there are two properties by default, publish date and updated on. I use the publish date so that I know, like yesterday there were so many blogs that were published. We'll see about that part as well. So the publish date is what I prefer, and then you can post it to Twitter. This plus sign is what I use to decide what happens using an action. Sorry, this thing happens very funny on my laptop. So yeah, I've zoomed in a little. I use Twitter. And if you see, it will show the Twitter, and the action will be available that you can retweet, post a tweet, get my following, some of the out-of-box availability, get my followers, search tweet. If you have to retweet something, a particular keyword, you can do all those in the actions. Going back, I don't want to add anything for now. Zoom back. Okay. Oh, it shifted. No worries. So using those RSS feed, what I've done is it tells my team also or my followers that a new Automate blog has been posted. I use the feed automate. The dynamic content is coming. So let me move, hide it. I don't want you again. Very fancy. Hide, go. Yeah, thank you. So the feed title would be the Power Automate blog post. This is the title. Going back, let's say this one, the Power Automate Desktop Feb 2021 update is the title that I will get it on the blog. And the primary feed link is, if I click on it, this blog will have specific link. So the link will also get posted in case someone wants to go in and read in detail for that. So in that case, I've done it. I've put in some of the hashtags that I use to that I usually use for my tweet posts. In the advanced options, there is media to be posted, but I usually don't post any image along with it. But you have a media to be posting or a default image, you can obviously use that over here. I don't use it. Similarly, on the LinkedIn, as you can see, that's a preview version. This is LinkedIn version 2, and the content URL goes here. Let me open the advanced options. I can choose to decide whether the primary link, the blog link, should be visible to the guest. It's a Boolean field over here. And you can enter your own custom value if you want. I've chosen to show it as visibility. The title of the content, this will remain internal and it will not be posted on your LinkedIn media. The things to be posted on LinkedIn comes under the text field. And I have put it similar to my Twitter feed, that the feed title and the summary goes here, and the link will also come in automatically when the summary is posted. Just to show you that, sorry, for some reason my LinkedIn, for some reason I cannot see my menu options. So let me see if I can find quickly a post just to show you how this was posted. Yeah, I'm zooming in. Yeah, so if you see it will always tell you when you log into your either LinkedIn or Twitter that your post was successfully shared on LinkedIn. This came from Power Automate, and if you want to view it, you can always click on the link and come over here. I've opened a Power BI RSS feed, so that's the reason it is telling you about a Power BI. Something that I've done it from my side to leverage the RSS feed. It will give you a sneak peek of the description which I've used and the link to it. So let me quickly go back. So that's how I've used it. That was Power BI. This is Power Automate. And going back, I like the RSS feed a lot because that's where you can actually answer a lot of queries. I personally get a lot of queries from Power Platform space. So that's the reason I did it, the RSS feed. There's a retweet available that I don't, since I'm one of the admins on the Twitter for the champ Dynamics 365 champs. So previously I used to go and check if there is a Dynamics 365 champs hashtag, and I used to retweet it. And then over time we have shifted it to automated, so I don't have to log in manually and keep the Twitter page alive. Again, the Twitter connector is being used, and you can search over here multiple text. Let me remove this. So it tells you like search it for like happy hour on with double quotes or haiku, or with from at the username if you want to search for particular user. So that way you can do multiple text over here. Oops, sorry. Yeah, it was champs. So I've done it for champs, and it will search the tweet with the exact keyword, and you can use other keywords if you want, but I'm very specific about the champs. The quick or the good part was, as soon as you select something, the apply to each flow will know that the number of tweets it will get over here I've selected by default the maximum results to be 1. If I change it to 2 and save it, it will select the last 2 tweets, or it will only find out the 2 tweets with hashtag D365champs and will move to the next step, which is apply to each. So I did it for 1. And the apply to each Power Automate will tell you to retweet it. So I've just retweeted the tweet ID. If I want to test it live, there is a test option and there is a flow checker. Flow checker will immediately validate for all the errors and warnings, and it will list down over here if there is any. If you want to test it, you can create to do it manually. So let me do it. Let me test it manually. I'm switching over and let's say testing hashtag D365champs. Oops. Sorry, during my session. So I've done it. I'll go back and it says your flow ran successfully. That is like within seconds. How I will check whether my flow ran. Let me refresh my page and I'll go back to my profile. Here it is not showing any retweets, but somehow it is telling me that the retweet has happened. Let me quickly change the logins and check.
I think I claimed that one. I tweeted abusing the automation a little bit before you did your demo. And
yes, so you did that one. And I was funny thinking what happened. Okay, thank you, Gordon, for testing me, testing the tweet. Sorry. Yes. So sorry. Let me go back. You scared me a little for that. I was like, what happened? Okay. So when you test it manually, you have to perform the trigger action, and when you do it automatically, it will always go for a recently used trigger. Yes, Gordon, coming. So moving back to this, the edit, the page. If you want to edit and go back to the flow where we was, you can always use edit. The share option, save as, if you want to reuse the same thing with a different one, with a different hashtag, you can do that. You can always send a copy, submit this as a template, export it as a zip always. This will come in picture when you have to export the entire flow into a different environment. This will help if by mistake, let's say, in my official account, I see a lot of environments. By default, whenever you log in, it will always log into the default environment, and it will not log into your development environment. So we have done a lot of scenarios in the past that we created in the default environment, and we were busy scratching our head why the flow is not running. That was the reason that it was created in the default environment. So then the export will help you to export the package from one environment and import it to another environment. Turn off. If I choose to turn this off, it will tell me that there's a potential problem, and I can check the flow. It's basically that my flow is off. It will not run it even if someone tweets now. You have to again turn it on so that whatever the action and trigger it needs to be done should do. Sorry, the connections is on the right hand side. The LinkedIn it shows that's my profile. I've already added my Twitter account. That's the reason it's telling me all those. The owner part is basically who has created it. This will come in picture when you have shared the flow and want to do something. Since I'm using the free version, it will not allow me to share this part. These are some details of the flow, that when it was created, when it was modified, what are the plans, and this is the 28-day history. So when it has failed, yes, I failed it. Trust me, there was time when I was scratching my head of why a simple retweet is not working. So let me go back. There is a POC hashtag that I was doing. Let's go back. The flow is turned off. This is an instant flow that I was talking about of manually triggering it. Oh my goodness, I'm already taking a lot of time. Sorry, last thing. So you can always trigger it a flow. When you add it, it will ask you of what type. I've selected as a Boolean field. I can search the tweet. Thank you. And again, it will apply to each. Let me delete this to show what happens and how apply to each will apply automatically. Zooming in a little, my laptop is doing all the fancy stuff today. So here also I've done it for maximum results to be 1. I don't want to do it, and please wait for your testing. The flow is off. Nothing will happen for now. Let me search for Twitter, spelling mistake. So it will show me Twitter, and once I've selected it, it will tell you what action to be done. I'm clicking here retweet. Oops, nothing happened. Sorry, let me delete it again. I did something else. So I searched it. The new step would be Twitter. I don't want to get my followers. That's been changing from the course of time. Tweet to be retweeted. I would like to just retweet the same thing. Tweet ID. And if you see, as soon as I selected the tweet ID, the apply to each came. So whenever I turn this on and the hashtag that techie girl, anyone would have done, it would retweet it. So saving it for now. If we're live on Twitter, the minute I do, either my testing will work or yours. So we'll see. Saving and testing now. Since it's an instant one, it will always ask me yes or no. So should I do it? Let's do it. No, I'll not do it. I'll post a tweet first. Oops, I'm not on my official account. Oh my God, 13 already. That checky girl is testing. I've tweeted it. Let me do it as yes. Run the flow. Is off. Did I turn it on? My flow is disabled. Very funny. I'm going back. Turn it on. Awesome. I've turned it on. Let me test manually. It will only get me one result. Say it as yes and run it. Fingers crossed. If I go on the flow runs page, it will show me all the runs history and it says test succeeded 3 seconds ago. Let me see. It finally did. Okay. So if you see, it has retweeted, and who is retweeted? I'm retweeting my own posts over here. Going back, Matt, hi, sorry. So this way, if you want to resubmit, you can do it and it will run a test for you again. But this is the way you retweet a flow. You can do update your own LinkedIn or Twitter account updated all the time with all the RSS feed you want. You can also do Pinterest. I'm not on that, so I've not done it. I go back to my slide. The next steps, that was the demo for now. I have to share. The next steps would be, if you're still interested in knowing this, there are learning paths available from Microsoft. You can visit it. On the learning path, there is no barrier. So if you are on the front end side who talks to customers a lot, this is still for you. You can do it. There's a learning path for you as well. For all the techie developers over there, there is a learning path for you as well on that side where you can do all the fancy stuff and you do R&D. So go to the environment maker or the app maker pathways. Those are for use. You can create your own free environment just the way I've done it. check out all the free connectors you want to use and leverage. And last but not the least, welcome to the community. Just go hang in there. There are people who will help you irrespective of what place you have come from, but there are good people over here. So that's it from my side. Thank you. I hope I did something and you are still up. If you want to still stay in touch with me, you can tweet to that techie girl and I will respond if I'm up. Sorry, this Pulse Secure server. You can tweet me. You can check out with me on the LinkedIn. I do have a WordPress blog. I write about Dynamics 365 and Power Platform space in that techie girl Roma. So that's all for me. Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, there's quite a few questions. So
Yeah, there is quite a few. So be prepared.
Yeah. So someone says, I've noticed the Power Apps platform, the Power Platform is big in India, especially with mobile apps. So there's not really a question. Mobile apps in like Kaizala. I'm assuming it's more of a statement. It's quite big. Do you know how accessible these apps are created with like Power Apps or Flow or probably also like Power BI? Like, do you know what level of accessibility? Since we just learned we need to be more accessible.
There are accessibility features in this one as well. I have not personally checked it out, but since with respect to the previous sessions, I'm now more keen to check that. I have seen some of the blogs and videos that are specially done for the accessibility. If anyone you guys know about Scottish Summit that is going on, they have a whole track of accessibility on the Power Apps or I should say on the Power Platform side. So do check out those sections on the accessibility.
Cool. It's an interesting question. Sort of maybe you've got some opinions or something. This guy Matt says he uses the IFTTT or whatever is probably a cool way to say that, or Zapier. And how is Power Automate better? He asked, but I think also how is it different? Why would you pick Power Apps over one of the others?
So since I have a non-techie, I have I would say the connector for the Zapier, if I heard it correctly, Matt, would be available. I would be able to use it easily since if I'm assuming I'm non-techie. No, I did not find that connector over here.
No, I think Zapier is like sort of let's call it the competition to the Power Automate. So I don't know if you've worked with that, and why would you pick Power Automate over Zapier?
Okay, so whenever I think these questions have come, it has already always come down to the pricing levels. I have not included that, but we'll have to check regarding the prices, which one is cheaper. That's with my past pre-sales and sales experience with any platform, whether it is Microsoft or any competitor. So that way you can leverage, and then you have to also deep dive what the Zapier is providing, the pros and cons, and with respect to Power Automate. So it's quite a deep, good analysis that is required before I comment on any of the platform.
And I suppose this probably is one reason maybe you can or can't, is can you use the business process of different ERP or HR systems like Sage or Payday? So I'm assuming there must be some sort of automation integrating business processes in here. I'm not quite sure. You probably just need some connectors. I don't know if you've got any thoughts.
I haven't seen that myself yet, but yes, since on my in my day-to-day life we have integrated with some of the APIs, so I'm assuming there should be that should be a yes.
Okay, yeah, I suppose you could interact with a general REST API or something, and if the service that you're using in your system is got a REST API, then you can just totally do whatever.
That's correct.
And another question is just desktop flows. Can you automate things like on your desktop, or is that like so you can automate things for Word or something like that?
Yes, you can do that. So I did not check it out. I did not show it today on the demo, but there are videos available. Check it for Shane Cow's maybe, or I'm not sure if David would have done it, but the desktop flows would allow you to easily help around the desktop stuff that you normally do. But you would have to make sure, since I've not checked, I'm just assuming that your monitor or your desktop has to be turned on. So you cannot do it anything if it is shut down mode, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Scrolling a bit to the end. I suppose there's a, no, that's just a cool statement. You can post all over the place, automating everything. No need to have hundreds of apps. And the question about, does Power Automate have an Instagram connector? And this also raises a question, is it free to use as well? So I'm assuming you don't pay per connector to use it. It's more of a price.
You don't have. Yeah, we do have an Instagram connector. That is one of the recent added connectors. I'm showing it on the screen currently. The way the pricing works is on the number of times a flow was run and not when a connector is used. So yes, if you are still there, the person has asked this question, you can use the Instagram one. I'm not on a, I don't post my Instagram with the technical stuff. That's personal side. So, but yes, there are a lot of templates I can see for the Instagram. You can use it if you're one of those content media creator. Please feel free to use Instagram. And since I can see you can connect to the Instagram API, if you're on the developer side, you can maybe tweak around a little, if that's help.
Oh no, that's pretty good. Oh, I don't know if there's any other questions. Maybe Alan's got a bunch. He's been storing up.
I noticed you skipped the comment on Xamarin, monkeys, and MailChimp. Wonder who did that.
Yeah, that was a statement, a fact.
Oh, okay. No, I've got no questions from my side, and it looks like we've gone through all the questions from the audience.
Oh, some nice questions. Okay.
Thank you so much for having me today. Hope you all have a good day ahead.
Yes, thank you for popping by. All right.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much for the talk. It was awesome.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay. I think next in the lineup is Niels. He's going to set SQL Server free with Kafka.
Niels, if you're talking, you are on mute. Classic lockdown speeches.
Oh God! I mean, the most common heard statement the last year and a half is, "Can you guys hear me?" Followed by, "Can you see my screen?" Right? So oh wow, that looks good, Matt. That drink there, that was awesome. Right, so let's start again. How's it, guys? Good to be here. We are, so I think I'm rounding out up this evening with SQL to Kafka. I'm Niels. I'm software architect at Derivco in sunny Durban. Been here for quite a few years, and at Derivco we are doing online writing software for online gaming. So that's what we do. Let's get started here. Cool. So SQL to Kafka. Here are my details. If you're interested, ping me. My blog here, nielsberglund.com. If you're in, yeah, I have some stuff there that you can read if you're interested. Anyway, so data. So as Alan said in the beginning, I'm a MVP, data platform MVP. So data is my lifeblood. I like data. I like databases. And if we are looking at data at the right now, we are generating more and more data. All of us are generating more and more data. So there has been some research done, and they said in 2016 we had the total amount of data worldwide was 16.2 1.1 zettabytes, and zettabyte is a billion terabytes, so it's a lot of data. However, in 9 years' time, we are estimating that we will be up to 163 zettabytes, so 10-fold increase of the amount of data in the world. Why this is interesting is that we need somehow to handle the data. So if we want to stay competitive, we need to handle the data. We need to be able to analyze the data. We need to be able to react on this data. And the thing is that we want to be able to react on the data in real time, or at least more and more in real time. We may not want to do batch jobs, etc. But as the data happens, then we want to be able to do something. That can be for fraud investigations. It can be in our space, online gaming, that we want to do stuff with the player. Player is doing something and we want to reward in real time. Right, so this whole real-time handling of data is important. If we then take a look at how how it used to be, or well, what is kind of like even today, that when we are getting data and we are persisting that data. So it looks something like this, that we have data coming in here from the left-hand side, and we push it down into a database. And in my world, it is SQL Server. I'm not aware of it existing any other databases than SQL Server. I've heard about something called Oracle or something, but I don't know, some minor product out there. But anyway, so we are pushing down data into this database, and now if we want to do something with the data, well, then we query the data and we are getting a result up, and up on the above this dotted red line, we have very, very low latency, which is good. Low latency is good. When we are coming into the database, we're getting all of a sudden, we're getting high latencies, we're getting transactions, we're getting locks, etc. And that does not really lend itself to real-time handling of data. In other words, the data comes in and then I decide to query the data, and then a lock hits, and then 5 seconds later I'm getting the result. That is not real time, right? But the fact of the matter is that this is the way it looks in quite a few organizations, and God knows it looks like that in the Rivco, for example. So what we really would want to do, if we want to react this immediately, is that this service, this API that generates the data here on the left-hand side, that would simultaneously send the data into the database, right? And also send it to some sort of service, right? And we would then have on the right-hand side applications that consumes the data from the service, doing something with it, and potentially write it back down into the database. So then we're really getting the best of both worlds. That we have a real-time handling of data as well as storing the data down into the database. However, once again, that may not be that easy. Changing these services that we now have had for 10, 15, 20 years doing stuff, changing them to all of a sudden start publishing data in real time may not be that easy. So we need to come up with some other way of doing things, right? So what if we could, as before, push the data down into the database, but as soon as the data hits the database, we push it back out to this service. And we have consumers applications that listens to this service and is doing stuff with the data. That could be an option, right? So that service then, isn't that complicated? Well, the service would need to handle the data. It would need to be able to handle connections from the applications. It would need to be able to do quite a lot of stuff. And in addition, it would need to be extremely performant and extremely scalable. And for us mere mortals, it may not be that easy to write such a service. So that's where Kafka comes into play. So Kafka can be this particular service. And so why Kafka? Why is Kafka good? Well, so Kafka, what is Kafka? So 101 of Kafka. So Kafka has become the de facto standard for streaming, for event streaming of data. It started back in 2014 at this small company called LinkedIn, where they wanted something to replace their then existing messaging system. The Kafka is basically a distributed streaming platform where we are publishing streams, which is really events, records, call it whatever you want, and we consume these streams and events. What Kafka is doing, and this is what kind of differs it from other messaging system, is that by default Kafka persists these published events, these published records, and we can go back in time to retrieve them. And what Kafka really is a commit log, and that is good. Well, I'm a database guy. I like logs. I like commit logs because that is the source of truth. And so Kafka is a commit log, and it is also distributed, so we can get scale and resilience and all that good stuff that we want. So let's have a look at. So for this talk, I've installed Kafka on Docker on my box. So let's see if we can find where I have a. So I have installed something called the Confluent platform, and on the slide you may have seen a bullet point saying that Confluent is the commercial arm of Kafka. So Apache Kafka is open source. There's a company called Confluent that's founded by the developers, the original developers of Kafka. This Confluent, the company, is already commercial, but they are selling. They are selling Kafka. You can buy support, etc., for them, and they have a really good offering. And they do have something called the Confluent platform, where when you install Confluent platform, among other things, well, in addition to actual Kafka, you're getting this web UI, the Confluent control center. And when we look at Kafka, we have certain components. So we have first of all, we have a cluster, right? So we have a cluster of servers, we have a cluster of brokers, and regardless if you have one or more broker, you have a cluster. When you are dealing with Kafka, you are sending messages to a topic, and the topic consists of partitions. So if you are a database person, you may know about partition tables, and normally both in databases as well as in distributed computing, we're talking about partitioning. So we are splitting up this topic in different parts, and these different parts are now distributed out over multiple servers, multiple brokers, and that's what makes Kafka performant as well as scalable. We also have something that called KSQLDB, which is almost like a streaming database, And then finally, and we'll talk a little bit more about this today, we have connect clusters. So connect is a way where we can, from Kafka, connect into other data sources, databases, Hadoop, what have you, or we can connect from these data sources into Kafka. And we will see an example of that a little bit later on, where we are using this connect to do stuff. So if we're then scrolling in here and looking at topics, so we can see I have topics here. And when we are looking at the topics, I have created 2 topics for this particular session, topic called test topic and a topic called wagers. So that's what we're going to use going forward. Anyway, so that was a little bit about Kafka. So now then what we want to do, well, sorry, we want to go back to here, right, where the data is now coming in from the service into the database, and at the same time as it is being stored into this table, right? That's my awesome drawing skills. At the same time as we're storing this into the table, we want to immediately send that data back out to Kafka. Yeah, because we want to get this real-time handling. We do not want to be excessively impacted by my transactions and locks and all that bad stuff in the database. So as soon as the data hits the database, we want to push it back out again. Right. So what options do we then have? That from SQL Server, push it out to Kafka. Well, we can use something called SQL Server Service Broker. Service Broker was introduced in SQL Server 2005. Many years ago, and that is a way where we can, when something happens in the database, we can call something, we can get out of the database. We can have an external initiator for SQL Server. However, I have a little bit of an sort of sad face here. At the Rivco, we used Service Broker in the beginning. Well, when I joined 11 years ago, we used Service Broker a bit, but we have found it lacking in a couple of areas. It's very much a black box. When something goes wrong, you have no idea what happens. And also the performance is not as good as it could be. We have SQL CLR. And you guys that know me, you know that I am a huge proponent of SQL CLR. It was introduced back at the same time as Service Broker. SQL CLR means that you are running .NET assemblies, .NET code inside SQL Server. We can do this through Change Data Capture, CDC, where we have something called Debezium, a company or a framework called Debezium that can listen to the transaction log, and when an insert, update, delete happen, Debezium can retrieve that data and push it to Kafka. And then finally, in SQL 2019, well, actually, this was introduced in SQL 2016, but in 2019, this became interesting for what we want to do. We have something called SQL Server External Languages, which is exactly that from inside SQL Server, we can call an external language, external to SQL Server, something that sits outside of SQL Server. And we can call that in order to publish to Kafka. So, and in the talk, we will have a look at SQL CLR, we will have a look at Debezium, and we will have a look at external languages. Cool. So before we go into there, however, let me have a look at my database. So if I can find here my Data Studio. I hope that the font is big enough. Maybe someone can make a comment if it's
Maybe zoom in a little.
zoom in a little. Okay, cool. Come on, what to zoom for? Okay, so let's see how we do this. Right. Okay. Cool. I will zoom here when we start looking at the actual code. So we have a database called gameplay database, and we have a table called gameplay. If I am now looking at the gameplay table, if I do select from that one, fortunately I don't have anything in that table, which is good, because if I had done, something would have gone wrong. Cool. I have a couple of support tables here called Kafka cluster and Kafka event subscriber that are just configuration tables that will allow us to see where to send certain events to. And I do have a stored procedure here called emulate gameplay, which calls an production procedure log wager. So this is the procedure that this service API, what have you, the one that we had on the left hand side, calls to, as we say, log a bet, log a wager. It takes in some parameters: user ID, game ID, wager amount, payout amount, event time, and among all the advanced stuff it does, it inserts into this TB gameplay table. Right, cool. So then once again, I have this proc here. Sorry, I have the proc. There we go. I have this proc here, emulate gameplay. That is now, this is now a procedure where I'm make believe I am that service API. I am that dude that logs the wagers. We're having some random, we're having some information here. We're randomizing it to an extent. So how much did I wager? What was my user ID? Did I win? What was the multiplier based upon the wager from the win, etc., etc. And then eventually we are calling this the real proc log wager. Right. So if we then go into here and we just make sure that this works, it would be pity if it didn't. So we are now saying, okay, call this emulate gameplay and do it 3 times quickly on top of each other. There we go. When we are looking at, when we're saying select from gameplay, we see that, cool, I have now 3 wagers logged. We have a user ID, we have a game ID, we have the actual wager amount in cents, and we have a potential payout amount. Right. So that's now kind of, so here we now are, as in my sort of first diagram, that we are pushing data into the database. But if we now want to get data out, I need to do the select, or with where clauses and all that cool stuff that database developers are doing. But I want to do this in real time. I do not want it to hit the database and then someone is doing a select statement. I want it as soon as it hits the database, as we said before, as soon as it hits the database, I want to push it back out again. Right. Cool. So done. And that's now initially where we want to use SQL CLR. As I said, SQL CLR is means that you are running .NET assemblies inside SQL Server in the same process space, in the same memory space. isn't that dangerous, you may ask? Yes, it can be. If you don't do this at home, but trust me, I'm a professional. Anyway, so if we now want to talk to Kafka from inside SQL Server, from inside .NET, or if you want to talk to Kafka from .NET, we can use there is a .NET version of the Kafka client, which is cool, because then what we then can do is, well, I'm creating now a SQL CLR assembly, a .NET assembly that references that Kafka client. I have some method that publishes to Kafka, and then as I do with SQL CLR, I create a T-SQL procedure enveloping that particular method, and off we go. Right? I mean, that doesn't sound too bad. How hard can that be? What could possibly go wrong in that scenario? Right. The problem here is that when we are doing SQL CLR stuff, when we are having .NET inside SQL Server, certain assemblies are not allowed in SQL CLR. And unfortunately, this .NET client contains some of those assemblies. And also, we have another factor here is that this .NET client, the Kafka.NET client, reference and C wrappers, an unmanaged piece of C code that is actually doing the heavy lifting when calling to Kafka. And I can't push that guy into SQL Server as an assembly, because that is unmanaged code. That is pure C++ or C code, so that doesn't work. So we need to do some magic here. And what we first need to do is we need to, well, fortunately, the .NET client is the Kafka.NET client is open source. So I can download, I can take the source code for the .NET client, and I can actually take out all the pieces that I don't need. And fortunately, for publishing data to Kafka, I do not have any references to assemblies that can't be put into SQL CLR. I still have, however, the reference, the requirement to call this librd Kafka, to load the librd Kafka. So the thing here with that is that actually in the Kafka libraries, I can load this librd manually through some code library load path. So here is just some pseudo code that I have in my SQL CLR assembly. I call it send message, strangely enough, and the code that you see here is just normal code, .NET code to call into Kafka, except for this part. Here, library load librd path. And as you see, I have a parameter, a string librd path, where I now send in this, where does librd exist, and I can load it explicitly. Cool. So let's have a look at, so what I do now is I'm creating now my SQL CLR code, i.e. this. I create that as an assembly. I'm referencing the my compiled version of the Kafka client, and I install it into my database, which I should have here somewhere. Cool. Let's ensure that we are in the right database. So here is now the way how I creating my assembly. I'm saying create assembly Kafka producer. I say from where to create it, WBIM SQL CLR, Kafka SQL CLR producer DLL, yada, yada, yada. And then when we are looking here, select star from sys assemblies. That was not good. I thought I had created this dude already. So the demo, Gordon, step away from the keyboard, please. Let's then create it. And okay, and okay, cool. So now we have created my assembly, the Kafka producer. And it has also brought in that now recompiled Kafka client, Confluent Kafka SQL CLR. So now I have everything I need in my database. What I do is I'm creating an procedure, DBO PR publish to Kafka CLR. I'm taking in some parameters. Where is my server? Which topic do I publish to? Where is this librd stuff? What is the partition key? So partition key is, as I said before, where you are ensuring that Kafka can scale. And you can define a value to be a partition key, which then ensures that, first of all, you're getting ordering of messaging, because everything with this value or a modulus based upon this value will be put in the same partition, right? And then, so let's create this guy. Cool. And we can now just test that this is working. So here I'm saying that I want to hit my local host 1992. That's the guy we saw in that web UI before. I want to do the test topic. I'm saying where my librd path is, the partition key, which is just an R value in this case, and then what I want to say, send hello world. So this is just now to test this stuff. Right. So let's run this. Cool. And I'm getting back an offset. And we see the offset here. So offset is where has this now message been placed in the partition in this topic. And it has been placed at offset 0. So now when I'm reading, if I go to offset 0, I should be able to see my message. Right. Cool. So let's go back to my UI. Let's go into test topic that we have here. Go into there, go into messages. Then we say, and I want to go to offset 0. And we have liftoff. In other words, I have now, sorry. There we go. We now have an entry into this topic saying hello world. That is cool. So my CLR assembly is working. Awesome. Now what we want to do is we want to now put this into my proc, my procedure, where we are logging the wagering. So what I initially do is I'm creating what we in the Riv call a hook proc. So this is now a procedure which kind of generates based upon data that we have, generates this event and then sends that event to Kafka. And here, if you wonder what those Kafka tables was that we saw initially, I'm using them here to, I'm actually lying to you. I am using them here to figure out where to send my particular message. Ooh, that could have gone badly. So here I now need to, in this procedure, I now need to set this librd path. So let's try and see if I can find it somewhere. I'm on a second screen here trying to figure out where is this path, and it should be there. Cool. So generate and publish wager event. So here is now the hook procedure, and now what is left to do is we want to inject this procedure into that into the existing log wager procedure. So what we're doing is we inject it after I have inserted into this gameplay table, and so we are ingesting it here, and we're taking user ID, game ID, whatever, and there we go. I think there we go, at least. Cool. So now we should be good. Let's truncate out anything in my gameplay table, and let's call emulate gameplay. So remember, emulate gameplay calls into log wager, and in log wager, as we saw here a second ago, here we are calling now into this Kafka proc. So let's do that. Let's call that. Cool. Let's make sure that we have data here. Yes, we have data in my gameplay table. And let's then go back to Kafka. And topics, wagers, go into messages. And here we now have the three wagers that we just generated, that we just saw has now been created as events in Kafka. Right. So now what we have done, data has come into SQL Server, and immediately as it arrived in SQL Server, we have pushed it back out to Kafka. I can now have consumers of this that consumes from Kafka and is doing cool stuff, is doing machine learning, is doing fraud detection, doing a lot of various stuff. Right. So now we have seen how we can use SQL CLR to push data to Kafka. The next part here is change data capture, where CDC is kind of an, well, in the database industry, it's a way to find out that data has changed. We can do different ways to implement change data capture. We can use timestamps, we can use version numbers, we can use transaction logs, etc. And SQL Server supports change data capture. And SQL Server supports it through reading the transaction log. And together with CDC, we can use, so Debezium is the way to use CDC between SQL Server and Kafka. And Debezium, as I said, uses the CDC. It listens to changes in the database, and it publishes to Kafka after you have configured it to do so. And we have an MS SQL Server connector for Debezium. When we want to use Debezium, we deploy this connector to Kafka Connect, as I mentioned briefly before, and then we configure it to listen to changes, what tables, etc., etc., etc. So the SQL connector listens to changes, as we have said. We have to enable CDC both on the database as well as on the tables we want to use, and then we configure the connector to listen, to use these tables, and to what Kafka to send data to. Are a little bit late on time. I won't bother with doing this in live, but here on the left-hand side, we are seeing how we in the database we are enabling CDC. So first we do it on an database level, and then we do it for the various tables that we want to listen to, that we want to be part of this. And when we have enabled CDC, we can now configure this Debezium connector, and we give it a name. We define what class this is, and if we see here, we can see that this is now SQL Server connector. We're saying where is the host you are connecting to, what's the port, what's the user password, what database, important. This database server name, that is just a name, that's just an arbitrary name, it doesn't really matter. The whitelist are what tables do we want to capture changes for. We are then also saying, okay, where is my broker, or where are my brokers? I can have multiple brokers. And then finally, what should we call the topic that contains database history, and that is for DDL statements. Right? So what if we were to run this, you would see that by saying this DBOTB gameplay, we would get a topic in Kafka called TB gameplay, where when data ended up in that table, as we did before, it would be read by Debezium and pushed into that topic. Cool. So that is CDC Debezium. As I said, I want to run this now. We are soon running out of time. So the last thing I want to talk about are external languages and the SQL Server extensibility framework. So the extensibility framework and external languages was originally introduced in SQL Server in SQL 2016. And in SQL 2016, it only supported R, the data science language R. In SQL Server 2017, they added Python. What is interesting, and I mean, that's cool if you're a data science nerd. What is interesting is that in SQL 2019, Microsoft introduced Java as an external language. This is somewhat ironic, right? Java and Microsoft, historically, they haven't really had that much of a good cooperation. They were fairly rabid enemies at one stage or another, but well, when the devil grows old, he gets religious, as they say. So I guess that Microsoft has seen the light potentially and now embraces Java. So when we say in external languages, that means that they are external to SQL Server. They do not run in the same memory space or process as SQL. So they are, in that respect, quite opposite to SQL CLR. They are more like, if you are a database person, you may have heard about extended store procedures, and they are more like extended store procedures than SQL CLR. To use this, we need to use this an external language, we need to register the language with your database. And then when you have registered the language with the database, you can use this language by executing this dude here, sp execute external script. Right. So as the name implies, you are sending a script to the external language, and that works good with Python and R, which are kind of interpreted languages and are scripting languages. With Java, it's a little bit different. So if we now want to, we are still using this SP execute external script. We need to write the code in a specific way, and your code needs to inherit a class from an SDK, a Microsoft developed Java SDK. The class has a well-known method in where your code is being executed in. That method is strangely enough called execute, and you also have helper classes for parameters and data sets and so on and so forth. So an example what it could look like here is that we have my execute method, which takes these parameters, a primitive data set and a linked hash map. So this one here, primitive data set, as the name implies, you can send in data to your method. And in this linked hash map, you are sending in params as key value pairs, so name and a value, etc., etc. Then, then you're essentially just reading out the information that you are interested in, and finally, in this case now, you're doing what you want to do, you're publishing to Kafka. Right. So let's see that in action. So what we do here, we are in the gameplay DB, that's awesome. Let's check and see what languages we have to begin with. Okay, so I have actually beforehand, I have created this my Java language, and by default, you are getting R and Python as well, without you needing to do anything. We then need to, so this you do once per database. Oh, sorry, this you do one per database. You then create the Java SDK, also one per database. And I hope I have done that as well. Yep, I have. And then you can now test your code. I have created a jar file, a Java jar file called SQL 1.0 jar. I am creating now this, I'm now registering my code. I give it a name. I'm saying where the code is. So this is that there. Sorry, excuse me. And then what language this is in. And we can see that, okay, cool, I have a Java test here, and my Java test then is very, very easy. I'm calling SP execute external script, saying this is Java. This is the class, this is the package and the class. And by default, we are always hitting the execute method, as I mentioned before. Sending in params, and then in my code I'm doing some stuff, and when I run this I'm getting back and just saying that I'm basically echoing back what I sent in. So value of x equals 21 and y equals 21, and obviously from that we're getting the answer to all questions in the word galaxy, actually 42, right? That is just a test. Then finally, to use this, let me do a quick. I just want to delete this topic. And so what I'm doing here, I'm just purging out. So in this control panel, you don't have a way of purging your messages from a topic. So the poor man's purge is to delete the topic and recreate it. And so having done that, we can now go back to here. We use the gameplay, we're making sure we're in the right database, and I am now creating this library, my Java code that publishes to Kafka. Cool. We're selecting from external languages, and now, yes, we are good. Java published to Kafka. Cool. And I can here test my code. I don't want to do that because I want to live dangerously. So here, but okay, so let me just, so what I'm doing here is we see how I call sp execute external script. I say that the language is Java. I'm saying what is the package name, what is the class name. I'm sending in some data that I'm using in my execute method. And the message then is, in this case, hello world Java. So what we are doing is what we now do is what we did with SQL CLR. We're creating this hook proc, this hook point procedure, where we take some data and we're generating the event from that data. So let's create that hook procedure, and then we are now putting in. We are now creating publish wager. We are hooking that into my log wager. We are truncating out my table, and let's see if this works. So now we have created this. We have created my proc that publishes to Kafka. We have created the procedure that takes the data that we want to generate an event from, and we have hooked that procedure into my log wager procedure that we saw before. And now let's see if this works. If I get some warning messages here, which I do, that is good. Here, this indicates that, so this failed to load class, nothing to worry about. It has to do with some logging frameworks that I'm not using. We are doing a select star from gameplay, and we can see that we now have three events here at 1857 UTC, which means that I have a couple of minutes left before Alan kicks me out. And if we go back to my control center, I have here now my three wagers that I have, that we just created, that we just sent to Kafka from, in this case, Java inside SQL Server. Right, we talked about that. So the summary of this, we want to get data out of the database in near real time. Kafka is kind of the standard for event streaming, and we have various ways of getting the data out. SQL CLR, CDC, Debezium, and the final one we saw was SQL Server Extensibility Framework and external languages. The reason, well, besides being a little bit short on time, the reason why I skipped CDC Debezium is that, in all honesty, in the SQL Server world, CDC Debezium does not give you the performance you need. We have seen, when we did POCs of this at Eurivco, we have seen latencies of, well, a couple of seconds between the time the data hits the table and the data is in Kafka, and that in our use case is too long. If you just want to grab data from SQL and latency is not an issue, then CDC Debezium is definitely a way to do it. And that's that, boys and girls. Thank you so much. Questions?
Thank you very much. That was really informative. There's actually a question here which I think you were touching on already. It says the CDC Debezium solution looks the cleanest. Does it have any disadvantages over the other two?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, yes, definitely it is the cleanest. From a coding perspective, the configuration can though be a bit scary, a bit complex, especially if you're now looking at multiple tables, etc. But yes, it is clean, least amount of code for you as an implementer. But as I said, latency, and also if you're in a highly transactional, highly volatile OLTP database, you will see a performance impact based upon by using CDC Debezium. In other words, we saw 10 to 20% performance degradation when switching on CDC Debezium.
Okay. Doesn't look like any other questions. But I've one in like a general question. It's like you wouldn't use Kafka with just any SQL implementations. What would be a good reason for using Kafka and use cases?
As opposed to what?
Yeah. So when would you decide you need Kafka in your environment with SQL Server?
Okay. So the why we are, well, I guess the question would be why would you need real-time streaming
yes.
out of because Kafka at the end of the day is just a transport mechanism, right? Mm-hmm. So it happens to be an extremely good transport mechanism, but you could use RabbitMQ or something else for that matter. And we have actually done that in Derivco previously, but we then switched over to Kafka because it was better for our use cases. So this is once again when, sorry, let me go to here. So this is right. So if you want to handle data in real time, oh sorry, you probably can't see my screen. Okay, I won't bother. But if you want to handle
share your screen.
If you want to handle data in real time,
there you go.
Let me just see where I am. Cool. So if you want to handle data in real time, and you do not have the ability to change this layer to go there and there, right? So so initially it looked like this, right? So this is now Derivco now 10 years ago. We lived and died by our SQL Server databases, and at that time 10 years ago this was good enough. We pushed data in, and if we wanted to do something with the data, we queried it, got the result out. But that immediately now gives us a very, very high latency. So what we really want to do, if we want to store data in the database together with getting real-time data, is we want to change our services to do this, right? It publishes directly, and it also at the same time writes to the database. But if you can't change this service here to do this, i.e. if this service only writes to the database, that's when you now can do a would do a scenario just like we have seen, that the data comes into the database here, and we then immediately take the data out of the database to the service layer, which in this instance happens to be Kafka.
Niels, how would you handle consistency in that scenario? So if I push to that service and then my commit to SQL fails, isn't that a problem?
So yeah, you are definitely hitting the nail with that one. And
Okay.
so you would need to be, okay, so let me go back to, where is my code? There is my code. You would, what you would need to do, if I can find my right procedure, is to, so this is now in my procedure that is doing the log wager. So you would need to, when you are when you're doing this insert here, you would, if this fails, if my insert fails, then you need to roll back and get out immediately.
Right, okay.
That will take care of the scenario whereby something goes wrong and you do not want to publish, right?
Yeah.
However, the problem you may have is you're doing this goes good, but for some reason this fails.
Yeah.
And we have battled with that at the Rivco for a while. We have a solution for it. It is not the best solution ever, but it is a way whereby we can actually guarantee delivery of messages now.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Sure.
Niels, I just have like a double question, maybe slightly the same question. The SQL connection that query runs on that you pass to Kafka, well, to the Java external language, does that run in the same context as the user that you're running in now? Or does that use sort of a different connection to connect back in? And then I suppose, like with that, if you have a table variable, are you able to pass that into that proc? Or would you need to commit that data into like a global temporary table to be able to have it passed into
so
your
when you
external?
say, okay, whoa, Gordon, come on, let's take this in. So for you guys that are just listening here, Gordon is also works at the Rivco, and he always tries to put me to shame. When you're saying connection, what do you mean?
So over there, you specifying a query that obviously that input data will get built off.
Yeah.
So are you able to pass in a table variable there instead of a query, or does it have to be a query? And then, what context does that query run under?
That context runs under the same context that executes this procedure here.
Okay.
Can you pass in a table variable? No, you can't.
Okay, so you'd have to commit that data to. So you would be able to use a local temporary table to pass it in. You wouldn't need to do a global.
Yes, correct.
If you want, okay.
Correct.
Cool.
Yeah, correct. Cool.
Yeah,
Other
awesome,
questions?
Thanks.
Awesome.
I think we're out of questions. Is there anyone here that's got any more questions? Because there's none from the audience.
I don't have a question as such. I just remember seeing all this. Before I was working at Microsoft, I was working at a sports betting company and horse racing, and we also had the problem of, we stream the data in, and like the milliseconds delay between getting the data, and we sort of semi-rolled our own. This was a couple of years ago. So obviously, I think before when Kafka was young, and we did our own one using messaging buses and all that weird stuff we did. And I'm thinking, no, Kafka would have been good. So no, this is really cool. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing.
No, cool. Thank you very much for the talk, and thank you for spending such a late time with us in the community. But thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Awesome, guys.
Cool. Right, and yes, thank you everyone for attending. Yes, it's very late now, and thank you to all the speakers that we had tonight. Everyone was really amazing. If you would like to speak at these events as well, we do have a sessionize. We have 2 links there, one for Cape Town and one for Johannesburg. So if you have anything, everyone's got something to say, you're welcome to submit talks. And just a final thank you to OfferZen for the awesome swag competition that they're running. If you have forgotten to enter the competition, you still have chance, so the link is there on the screen. But thanks once again for Stephen for the session, and of course always providing the communities with awesome swag. But we've kept you awake too long now. It's late in the night, so thank you very much for attending, and have a good night, and see you next month.
Thanks, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Cheerio all.
Thanks.
Cheers, everyone.
Ciao, everyone.